I'm George Moss, the host of a program called What's Going On. We come on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'll be here for the next hour. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. Normally, I come in, I'm the only person on the air during my time, but we're here with the great Henry Hatter, who has been a staple here in the city of Flint and Genesee County. And I'm glad to have him as my guest today on my program. And Henry, I think you're doing a program at the studio also, right? In terms,
Yes.
what day do you tape your program?
On Saturdays.
On Saturday.
Yeah.
We're glad to have Henry because Henry is an icon. I saw Henry at the meeting when Trump was here, and we're in a Democratic stronghold here in Genesee County. But Trump came in and had a full house, and that's when you could kind of tell that the election was going real well for him. To be able to pull that kind of number in Genesee County was really quite a bit. Then I saw him again. I saw Trump again in Las Vegas, and that's where the Hispanics were. And when I saw that, I said, "This election is over." They talking about the guy does not have this support and that support, but look at what kind of numbers he's pulling. That stadium was full at the University of Las Vegas, and they had 19,000 there, and there was nothing but Hispanics in there. So we're glad to have Henry here today. He's a supporter of Trump. And Henry, let's talk about that. I think your daughter is. Tell us about your daughter working in the Trump administration.
Yes, my daughter was appointed by the by the Secretary of Commerce as the Assistant Chief of Staff. That's a powerful position. And she sent me a picture just a couple of days ago about what she views outside of her window.
Mm-hmm.
She is 2 blocks from the White House,
Mm-hmm.
and her window faces the Reagan Building. And a very beautiful site, very prestigious site. It's a great job for her and a challenge. And there are many people who may criticize her, but this is the opportunity for Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
This is one that she'll only have for 4 years. And while she's there, I encourage her to do her best,
Mm-hmm.
to follow directions, make sure she makes good judgments, and try to support the president's program as much as you can without resistance, because everybody's looking at you and everybody's hoping you'll fall on your face. So you want to make sure that you are there to do the job that you're assigned.
Well, how did she get that job? By the way, was it based on her past resume, or what was the connection that she had?
Well, she had been the chair in the Department of Energy of Minority Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess she did a pretty good job there. And this time, as you know, when Trump was here, I was selected, or they gave me the honor of being the a Lifetime Achievement Award. Remember that?
Right, I do remember.
Very few people get a Lifetime Achievement
Mhm.
Award. First of all, you got to live long enough. And
Mhm.
secondly, you got to be associated.
No, who
You gotta
gave you
have
that? I know you got the award. Who was the author of you getting that award? Was that the Republican Party here in
chair. No, it was the Michigan chair
Chair?
that
Okay.
had my records.
Mhm.
They knew that I had been involved in the party for 60 years,
Mhm.
and there's evidence of it. So this could be proven. And many white Americans probably thought it was very great. And because you have to live long enough, and first of all, and you have to be active and you have to be relevant in the party. You have to have achieved some goals for the party that made it better than what it was. And I remember there was a time that we had 47 Black individuals that belonged to the party, that supported it, and that went out and supported the party through not only their money, but through volunteerism.
Mhm.
That's how you make the party work. You
Mhm.
got to be relevant. And that's what we did.
They don't even know that I'm in the party, but I came to that party late. I'm a conservative, And that, of course, would, if I talk about party affiliation, then that makes me more leaning toward the Republican Party. But long before I consider myself as linked to the Republican Party, um, Henry, you were a long-standing member. I remember you back in the time period. You and Bob C.
Yeah.
And Bob C. was a very strong member.
Yes.
So you all were the standard bearers here in Jackson County because it's very difficult to be a Republican in this
We
county.
supported each other, Bob C. and I did.
Mhm.
And when Bob C. had the opportunity to go and work for the state of Michigan as the chair for Republican causes and to work for a candidate there
Mhm.
as his chief of staff, he did a good job. And Bob was not the kind of person that stabbed you in the back. We worked together as peers, and we tendered for each other. And that's what Republicans, Black Republicans, must be able to do. They must be able to have trust each other, and they must be able to have common cause and support common causes. And I tell many of the young people who are watching the program, and they're your clients today, that this is how you become Republican, what that means, and how you make a difference, and not only in your life, but the life of other people who look like you.
Mhm.
And if you can do that, then you can become accountable in the party and be relevant to other people that don't look like you. And you
Mhm.
got to be able to use those kind of components to
Mhm.
achieve goals that you want to achieve while you have the opportunity to do that.
Henry, did you ever think you would ever live to see the day when the number of blacks who are now trekking over to the Republican Party? You ever thought you'd see that day when the numbers would increase so dramatically as they're doing under Trump?
Well, I think there was a day coming, but I didn't know when it was. And it always looks so remotely different when you talk to people. I remember when I had written an article when I was chairman of the Republican Party indicating to Black Americans that they had the ability to make the same money that whites did for General Motors Corporation. And this was 1970. And I wrote the article to John Jackson, who was the editor at that time. And I asked John, why, or was it Joe Jackson? I don't recall. But I said, why did it take 80 years for the American people to know that Black Americans had become part of the middle class? This happened, according to uh, George Jackson and the Union, back in 1937 when they were hired into the plants after the Union struck for wages and safety. And the union and the UAW and the General Motors Corporation, for one, and Ford Chrysler as well, did boast that they paid their employees the largest wages in the world. Now, Black Americans were part of that, but nobody ever recognized that until I complained about it in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the journal and I had written this article about it took 80 years for the press and the Department of Labor and even Black colleges to recognize that Black people were part of the middle class. And the journal said, well, we'll hold up on that. I had already written my paper. They said, well, we'll just, and it was my cause that we became part of the middle class when the Blacks left the South and was inducted into the Army. And I pointed out the Tuskegee Airmen for one. And their parents left the South at that time, the Great Exodus, to come north to support the war effort by working in the plants. Therefore, they had the same money as whites did at that time, although they had difficulty in being even recognized and supported in that segment of society because there were always people who didn't think that blacks were capable of doing the same work and had the right to earn the same money as whites did. But nevertheless, we did. And I pointed out in my article that black people could, like in 1970, they made $30,000 a year. And I said, oh, guys, if we saved only 10% of the year, over the 10,000 of us who live in Genesee County alone with the 14 GM plants here, we could have $30 million at the end of 1 year.
Mhm.
And then we could buy a component of General Motors Corporation. I wrote that, and you know what the guys told me?
No, tell me about
You
it.
don't wanna hear it.
No, tell me.
They said, Henry Hatter, that's that white man's bullshit. That's that General Motors
Yeah, I know they gonna
bullshit.
be
That's
popular
that
received.
Republican
received.
stuff talking.
Okay.
So,
Not
y-
surprised.
yeah, this is what they told me.
Uh,
Now, the plants are all gone. The opportunities are all gone. And we could have been somebody. We could have been at the helm. We could have been directing, and we could have been uh, banking and stuff like that. But we lost all of those opportunities at a time when we were making buku money.
yes, I remember. Do you remember Tom Terry, who had the Flint Spokesman newspaper?
Oh yes.
Remember him back
Oh
in the day?
yes, I remember.
He told me, he said, if you get 20 blacks in a room, you got $1 million represented, because they're getting salaries at that time about $50,000. And he said, if you get 20 blacks in a room, you got $1 million. He was talking about how powerful that could be if they would learn
Yes,
to pool their money.
yes,
And that, I know. So when you talked about um, some kind of strategy to make some use of that power they have, we keep talking about we don't have any power, but when you talk about how you can use some of the power you have to do great things, they start turning off thinking that you're talking above their head or outside of some kind of norm, and it cannot be done. And when you told me you had that experience, I was thinking, I bet that didn't go very well
no,
with people
it
not.
didn't. But then over the years, and this is when you ask me about whether people do come back and give me a rough time about being a Republican. They don't do that so much anymore.
Hmm.
They treat me with dignity and respect.
Hmm.
And I always get it from whites, and I always get it from their kids because of the things that I've achieved and been part of that made a difference in their lives as well as in my own life. And and I've earned the trust of many of these folks who would go to bat for me and of course do things. And you have learned that, you have earned that too, George. Very few people. And you know, I can look at the number of people like who are my friends, but we share no political um,
Wonder why.
references at all. And like, for example, consider Judge Marable, um, Judge Heyman, Judge, um, and the other judge, the black judge, the youngest one.
I know you're talking
Yeah,
about.
but and Republicans, judges, and uh, they're not Republicans, but they're judges who understand the dynamics of what we put up with, what we go through it. All the attorneys as well. I have nothing but admiration and respect for these people because they give it to me.
Hmm.
And
Well, one thing about it, Henry, they can't say you're not serious because you've been at this for a long time.
yeah,
I think when I first came across, I knew your name, but I think I met you. I think Bob C. and
yes,
was
sure.
in that time period.
Yeah.
So about what time we're talking about? Is that the 19? You said 1970s.
1970, 1980s.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Were you really active before that?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Now, how did you get involved? I know you've been a Republican a long time. I mean, that's when nobody in Genesee County was unheard of. So, how did you happen to get into the party?
Well, I knew Don Riegel and and um, and Don Riegel and I were close together. We were friends. And when Don ran for, I think it was state representative, and he won, well, I, I joined the Republican Party. I went down, oh, well, my friend, there's a friend that if he can do something, then I ought to be able to do the same thing. I was inspired by him because we both were class officers at the same time.
Class officers, where now?
Yeah, class officers at Flint Central.
Okay.
So,
and you went to high school together?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I thought, well, maybe if he can do it, I can do it. So I went down and joined the party, and David Lero at one time was the chair, and we had Charlie Forth and all of those guys were great chairs at the time. We had some great people who were good to me, but what they did is that they had me work on things that other people would consider Uncle-Tomish and slavism and stuff like that. I had to go door to door to be run over by cars and bitten by dogs and stuff like that, lit dropping. But the man taught me something. He taught me how to advocate for things I believed in.
Rigo Jacquemart.
No, I'm talking about the Republican Party. This is the Republican Party. This Henry, I want you to go over and drop literature. Here's your zone. You go out, and even if you go by yourself, do it. Get it done. And now, when other people looked at this and they thought, oh, that Negro is doing a white man's job. But the man was teaching me something that. And later, I was able, when I went to General Motors Corporation, I was able to put this stuff to work. Because first of all, I began to believe in myself. If I could go, and then people warmed up to me. Even the people that I went door to door to. They asked me to have coffee with them and have tea. How do I like this and that, so on and so forth. And this was not always the Black community. I wasn't working in the Black community. I was working for the man. Republicans don't waste their time pursuing minutia. They have to target things that pay dividends. And so I went up and I did that. But I learned so much from them. And they said, well, and I wasn't always sure that there was somebody behind me when I got criticism and stuff like that. And whether I was doing it. But the man says, well, Henry, when you're going through hell, don't stop. Keep going.
Okay.
And get the job done.
You kept going. I can remember some of those storms you went through.
Yeah.
I mean, this was not popular, but this day has changed so much.
Yeah.
So all that work you did and all those slings and arrows, as they say, that you took during that time period.
But guess what?
You overcame all of that.
My daughter, who is in Washington today, I even took her around and taught her how to do this. And she got her cousins to do it as well. And pretty soon she loved doing it.
You do what now? You do this, you say? Do what?
Dropping
literature
for candidates. Now, most of the candidates at that time, Republicans, were white. So we would go into Flint, wherever they marked subdivided a division, that's where we went. And my kids now are as good as I am. My son was the secretary of his union for a while. And he did a good job. And so did and now he is the director, a field director for Goyette Mechanical for all of their out-of-town jobs. And he does a good job there. He knows how to do it because he was trained by systems, institutions. Of course, these were Democrats, but they still have the same degree of value in how they train people. But my daughter, now you were asking about her, why she is what she is. You can go back when she was a child, 8 or 9 years old. I remember my wife and I, Gerald Ford was going to be in town, and Graham Blank and we went out to see Gerald Ford. And my wife dressed my daughter up in uh, a blue outfit with a white top, and she was among 13 other girls that were going to be the presidential girls to meet her at the train stop in Grand Blanc. And from that time on, my daughter became really a winner there. She began to take heed of that. She learned from it. And when she graduated from Clio High School, the superintendent of schools gave her a recommendation to go work for the governor um, that year that she graduated. And that also happened with my son. Yeah, the doctor who
Mhm.
became the doctor. So my kids learned a lot from the just by. I know that there are things other than politics, and there are times that you need to do something differently, to see life differently from uh, other than a political point of view. That's what makes you round. That's what makes you whole. And I think that we have that kind of um, of learning capacity to achieve those. And that makes us learn how to get along well with other people, how to trust them, how to bring them into our pools or under the umbrella that we are, how to share um, uh, resources if we got them, if they can,
Mhm. Henry, were you surprised when were you in Battle Creek, by the way, when Trump came here, when he was running for president in 2016? Were you? Did you go? I went to Battle Creek to
Yeah,
hear.
I went all over the state.
You
We
went all
we
this.
we we met up in a lot of places,
Yeah. Okay.
just like we did a couple of years ago. I
Right.
was I I didn't always see you, but and I know that you go pretty much
Yeah, I
sometimes.
was there, and I was when I came back, and people found out I had been to a Trump rally. The question people were asking me, blacks and whites, were asking me
Mhm.
this question. Well, how have you? They were so surprised I wasn't jumped on. They thought I was going to get beat up or something. You know, Henry, you've been there. You see how they accommodate you more
Yeah,
so because they're so surprised. See,
yeah.
there's so few of us that are going
They're
to those.
glad to see us.
Yeah, they're glad to
Yeah,
see you, and they treat you with royalty. Not that I would have been deterred if they had not treated me with royalty, but you were treated so well, and then you hear these person talking about they thought it was going to have some kind of problems, and you have probably more problems in the Democratic Party than you would with the Republican Party because they really honor your presence.
yes, and besides, there is a persona that you have when you don't look with fear, and when you don't uh, have the aura of being afraid of something
Hmm.
or mistrusting someone, or someone is watching you, and therefore you need to criticize them. But just like you and I do, we treat people with dignity and respect, and they will return it.
Hmm.
They will recognize you as a peer. People have that capacity to recognize peers.
Hmm.
Um, and for all the years that we lived in Clio and all the positions I've had, I am the face of Clio when it comes to the Tuskegee Airmen's naming the I-75, the Tuskegee Airmen's Memorial Highway. Well, you have to start with the kids in Clio and the Board of Education and the Regional Planning Board and the Veterans Association who pulled together these big pools of people together to make all of that happen. It was not just I, but it was the people and the kids that did it.
So
Well,
the Tuskegee Airmen, what now? We're talking about
the
the
Memorial Highway.
Memorial Highway.
The,
Is that called Tuskegee?
yeah, that's called the Tuskegee Airmen's
I've been
Memorial.
sleeping through
It's
it.
posted.
I didn't
It's
know
posted
that.
in Genesee County, just north of 57, on the
Okay.
right side going
I didn't
north.
know that.
Yes, and it's posted at its extremities. As you come in from um, Canada, it's posted there. Welcome to the Tuskegee Airmen's Highway. And it's posted as you come into Michigan from Ohio, right inside
Yeah, I
of
did not
Toledo.
know.
And it says, "Welcome to the Tuskegee Airmen."
Yeah, Henry, I met one of the Tuskegee Airmen. He spoke at a class in at U of M. I was so impressed with the dignity
Yeah,
of this person, and having seen the film, that film they made about
yes,
the
the Red
Tuskegee Airmen.
Tails.
Yeah, that film kind of drew me into the kind of qualifications they had to have even to qualify for that. These were some highly trained. It seemed like the film was showing they were highly trained, with the
Yes,
scholarship and things of that sort. And this person was telling us it was so riveting to hear him talk about some of the experiences. And I know that uh, they had to. Well, they started asking for him after a while. First of all, they didn't know they could really prove their merit, but when they saw that they were so exceptional, at the end of that family show, they started asking for them. You remember that part of the film
yeah,
where they were making excuses because they kept saying, "Well, wait a minute." The guys didn't want to leave because they had not made their point. They wanted those Tuskegee Airmen to escort those planes to their destination. We could drop those
yeah.
those ordinances off where they were, and they knew those Tuskegee Airmen would not leave them. Now, some of the other guys that would be piloting those bombers and making sure they were secure and giving them security and all that as they delivered the bombs. If some other fighters would show up, they would leave and vacate the premises. They knew that the Tuskegee Airmen would not do that.
Yeah, the Tuskegee Airmen were a group that will never come again. It was a time when they grew up in a nation that was extremely biased, and they didn't think that and didn't want Black Americans to learn to fly. But it were men like Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson. You met Jefferson, right?
Yeah,
And I think John met Jefferson. But these were guys that said, I don't want to go to the army. I want to do what the white boys do. I want to fly a plane. And the high command at that time, the Air Force had not been resolved yet because it was the Air Command under the United States Army. That's how the Air Force functioned at that time. And it was and the high command was giving out different directions to individuals who controlled the uh, arrangements at Tuskegee Airmen, and they were really um, not understanding how they were supposed to function cohesively because the high command was doing it um, purposely to demonstrate that the flyers had no capacity to fly. So Mrs. Roosevelt, the president's wife,
hmm
oh, she heard of this, and Ronald Reagan was the guy who presented the Tuskegee Airmen to the American people because the high command didn't want to do that at that time, and they had to be attached to a segment of the United States Air Command before they could fly. And so Mrs. Roosevelt took a trip down to Tuskegee, Alabama, and she said, "Well, I want to see the Tuskegee Airmen, those so-called Tuskegee Airmen, and I want to see what they look like." Um, and they said, "Well, here they are, Miss Roosevelt, but um, I don't know what you would like to do." She says, "I want to fly it. I want to go up with one of them." And Mrs. Roosevelt was a very tough woman.
Right, right.
If you were,
She was our president, by the way.
yeah, she was. Yeah, she was a tough woman.
Yeah.
She said, "They said no, Mrs. Roosevelt, you shouldn't do that." And she says, "Well, I'll take that boy over there, that one right there." And so he took her up and around the field and dipsy do and stuff like that, roll the plane and stuff like that. She came back and down and she said, "Wow." And she went back and said, Delano attached these men.
Let them fight for their country.
Yeah, attached these men. And that was a powerful moment for Black Americans.
It was. You know, we considered that, having read the history of that, because I wasn't there at that time. I was born in '44, but what we did during the Roosevelt administration, based on the record, is that we told our situation to Eleanor, and we had Eleanor talk to Franklin about the problems, and
Yeah.
that's how we got things done. She was our president. Eleanor Roosevelt was Black people's president during that time period. She was the one that talked Franklin into a lot of things that he did.
Yeah. See, I was not exactly sure about that, but I know that when I learned this from the Tuskegee Airmen, that she became somebody to me. And
Mhm.
she was just not a Democrat. She was one of our tenacious leaders of grandeur,
Unsung hero.
respect. Yeah.
Yeah, she was quite a special first lady. She doesn't get a lot of credit because we get these glamorous women now as the president's wife and things like that. Melania and
Yeah.
Jackie Kennedy. You know, it's kind of
Yeah.
model type lady. She was not that type of first lady, but she was very, very, very cognizant of the problems that
Yes, she was very well learned and very tough.
very learned and very adamant about what she believed
Yes.
in.
Yes.
And I remember that one. I don't know if you saw the film called A Soldier Story, but they were refusing to salute this one guy in the film, this black guy. I think he might have been a sergeant, and they were not showing him any respect. So since they would not salute him, he took his uniform, his coat off, and put it over there and hung it on that some kind of a maybe the fence or something. I forget exactly where he put it, but he put it somewhere and said, "You will salute the colors." So if they had an objection to him wearing the colors,
Yeah.
you're gonna make them salute that
Yeah.
the colors of the country.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just something at that time period. We didn't make any. We were not into all that excuse making.
Mhm.
You know, that would come later. It's like we got closer to the goal and we start making excuses. It's like you're getting close to the goal, you don't want to get there because then what?
Yeah.
You know how you push so hard for something and then you're finally getting ready to arrive at where you've been pushing for, and you get scared because it's what's next if this happens and so on and so forth.
Well, and you know, this was a time that when the boys in the field, when they talked to Mr. Charlie, they had to look down. But when they went into the army, and they had some good white boys that really knew how to put these boys into shape. They said, "You don't salute like this. You say, hold your head up, salute like that."
Mm-hmm.
And see that saluting like this, and they even showed that you don't curve your eyes under
much step
and
and
look up
fetch it.
at the man. He says you look like a man and you act like a man and you stand like a man.
Mm-hmm.
And and you know the role of the Tuskegee Airmen were to be drones for the bombers. The bombers were called the Flying Fortress,
Mm-hmm.
and each bomber had a crew of 10 people, two pilots, pilot and co-pilot, two bombers, two wingmen, two sub-gunner man, and all of that until you made 10 of them. And each time one went down, 10 white Americans went down, and a lot of them went down. So then they developed these drones, these P-51s that black soldiers flew, Tuskegee Airmen, and they flew in escort of the bombers with 10 white pilots, 10 white officers on it. And the P-51s were so fast, they had to fly ahead and then loop back all the time. They were always circling the airplanes, making sure that they took the fire, either from the ground or from airplanes that like the Luftwaffes and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
that were really good. And they saved a lot of Americans from dying. I don't remember the exact number there, but Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson was sat down in August of 1944, and he stayed in the Stalag 17 until he was released by Patton in April of the following year. And the war ended in Germany in May of that same year, 1945. Then they decommissioned the Tuskegee Airmen because President Truman then um, wanted to turn the efforts to the Japanese. Um, and but uh, uh, although these guys were decommissioned, they could now at this time they could join the Air Force now without uh, the negativity associated with it.
Mhm.
But there are many people who were and we had a couple of people from Clio that was in the Air Force at that time, and they were uh, attended by the drones of the Tuskegee Airmen, and they give nothing but credit to these guys that did a good job.
Yeah,
And
I think that black men gain a lot of manhood type of things from their service in World War One and World War Two. And I was thinking as you were talking about it, I was thinking about this poem that came out. I think it came out in 1919, written by Claude McKay. It's called "If We Must Die," and that was when they came back from World War One, and they were saying we fought for democracy over there, and doggone it, we're gonna fight for democracy over here. And it funneled a poem into existence out of the pen of the great Claude McKay, who was from Jamaica, and he wrote a poem called "If We Must Die." I'm going to try to recite that poem
sure,
just as a part of what we're doing here with this part of the conversation, if I can recall it.
I love to hear it.
If I can't recall it,
That's
you
all
can
right. I'd love to hear
smack
it.
me.
Yeah.
Here's what Claude McKay said. It's called "If We Must Die." He said, "If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood should not be shed in vain, and even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us though dead. O kinsman, we must meet the common foe. Though greatly outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their thousand blows, deal one death blow. What though lies before us but the open grave? Like men, we'll face the murderous, cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying, but fighting back. They came back from World War One with that poem. That's the kind of idea that they had at that time period.
That is wonderful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
there was
That
a
gave
spirit
me-
that you talking about how they were saluting their head down.
Yeah.
It helped them develop a little bit more backbone.
Yeah.
That
You
was a lot
can't
of,
trust a person that has no backbone.
no, you can. And he would be, wow, tell me about that. I mean a lot of them all the time. I don't trust them. You got your back. A king told him if you have your back bent, a man can't ride your back unless your back is bent. And so, we learned, there's a lot of things you learn along the way. And we grew up. Blacks began to grow up around that time period. I couldn't understand when I was coming up. I was raised in Burke. Were you raised here, Henry? And
Yes.
you raised in Tennessee County,
Yeah.
in Flint or
Yeah.
in Flint?
Yeah. I went to all elementaries. Went to Clark School. Elementary.
Okay. See, I'm from Birmingham, and I used to notice a lot of people. We had they had these Wall Streets
Yes.
in these black communities, business areas. And I used to see these people. Mr. McHellen had his arm um, missing, and he had had a sleeve down there, and for his arm. And another person, Mr. Turk, had a leg shot off. Mr. Sanks had funeral home. All this in the same business area. I wasn't getting at that time that they were able to go into business because they had fought in the war and they had the GI Bill. And when they came out of the service, they were able to get the GI Bill to give them money they could start businesses up. So all up and down that street, this was 61st Street in Woodlawn, and they had all these businesses. I can almost recall it now where they were located. That was Mr. McHellen on the corner. He had a cafe. Next to him was Mr. O'Neill's barber shop. Across the street was Mr. Saint's funeral home. Next to him was Mr. Hines shoe repair. They were moving. If you had told me at that time that we were not on the move, and then King came along, I thought we were going. And then all of a sudden, we arrived in 2025, and you wonder, you look around, what happened? You get whiplash trying to figure out what do we make the wrong turn here?
Yeah, it's amazing that how much we have grown, and the kids out there who is watching your program today, and the adults and other interested people are watching the program. I hope this teaches a lesson to them about we would not be here had it not been for those men, the Tuskegee Airmen, the men who said, "I will never chop cotton again." This is what some of the Tuskegee Airmen. I will never go back and chop cotton again, or to be subjugated, or to be treated like an animal. I won't do that anymore. And the Tuskegee Airmen have a lot of. They don't have acrimony like many people do who were in the war. They kind of never forgot how they were treated in the South. But the Tuskegee Airmen, they were there, what they had earned and the pride, what they had learned, they would with pride and dignity. And even though they didn't get everything they wanted to, because things don't happen overnight, it takes time for everything to happen, to bring parity to us as human beings. But that's why we're sitting here, is because many of those people, and I can include Mrs. Uh, uh, Roosevelt as well. Those are the kind of events that allow us to sit here today. Otherwise, we would not be here. And I don't care how black you are or how light you are, that has nothing to do with it. It's what we put into the game, what the effort we've made, and the roads that we've taken that were not popular, and we accomplished, and the goals that we have set for ourselves and our kids. That has made us who we are today, and have set a path and a platform for the kids of tomorrow, if they can keep it.
Would you say that when you were going through those storms, I know the storms you went through because would hear some things about how they talk behind your back and this kind of a thing. You weathered a lot of storms. Did you ever feel overwhelmed by some of the things you're running into because you were standing up differently than a lot of other persons and had the courage to stand up for your convictions that you were doing? Did you ever think about this? Is it worth it? I mean, did you think about throwing the towel in and coming out of the wilderness, so to speak?
No, you know, my grandpa was, my brother always called him the old white man because he was Irish. He was very light fluid, and and you could see the capillaries in his nose. That tells you how light he was.
Okay.
His hair was more frizzy like mine, but he was still, you couldn't tell him from the man. And I kind of, and I learned pride from them and my uncles. The McIntyres were quite a family here in the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. And because after they came back from the war, they established the first Black Cab Company here in Flint. And they trained their kids, and they educated their kids, and to the degree that they could. And so there was a lot that we earned from them, and we learned from them, that made me more resistant and to easily cave in. And not only that, but the man was feeding me a lot of positives too. I didn't just do it all by myself, but it
Mhm.
was other people who said, no, th- I was, can you imagine this? I've had the president of the United States as my guest.
As your guest.
Yeah, President Bush, one.
As your guest where now?
I've had President Bush as my guest. I wish I had brought some of the pictures of him.
As your guest where? I mean, what?
Here for a fundraiser.
Okay.
I've had Governor Milliken in my home as a guest.
Yeah.
And this was,
Mhm.
it goes back a number of years. But guess what? All my family was there. My brothers and sisters, all my kids, just to meet the governor. So I've had lots of opportunities that other people didn't have. And I remember when Joel, Florida, when we had the governor out there, he rode his horse to Clio. And when they turned onto my road, he escorted the brigade or the barrage down Farron Road. So, and that created a moment that gave me pause to be proud. You can't go back once you go through those kind of achievements. There's no way back. You can never
Henry,
go back.
when I saw you at the rally when Trump came here this last time, and if you remember, I went to you were sitting in the front
Mhm.
row, and I said, Henry, I want to take a picture of you. I want to get a picture of
Yeah.
you because I think that you are an icon in Jackson County. But the things that you stood up for and never did any backsliding, it would have been very easy to, in fact, throw your hands up in the air and just kind of quit and go into what would have been more popular. You never did that. And I've always from afar admired. I like the ones that will stand out and stand up. And you're that kind of person. I always admired that. I never told you that before. I kind of admired that in you. And I take you as kind of like an icon, quite frankly, in Genesee County because there are not very many like you.
Well, either that or I was foolish and didn't know what I was doing.
Too young to know.
Well, if I think about some of the things that I did, no, I probably would be straight to do it. But
You
I
have,
was
you have to be a
so,
little bit crazy, to
yeah,
stand up and do that because
yeah.
I remember some things I was doing and things I was saying to people that could have fired me like on the spot. And I was saying some things to them that I cannot. I look back and say, I was I out of my mind? What was I doing? But the youth is like that. I was that person that I had. My dad used to tell me all the time, "You're too idealistic,"
Yeah.
and he wanted to kind of rein me in. But you cannot be the person that you're not. You have to be true to yourself. And you've done that, and I think that's the thing that I find most admirable.
I think we have done that. That's why we're sitting here
Yeah, yeah.
as
We
equals
both had
and as
a lot of those
peers.
kind of experiences.
Yeah, and as peers. And we are here to assure that passes on to the next generation. If we don't, your success is based upon what you transfer to the next generation, your kids and those new people that come behind you, without asking for anything back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Henry. I want you to think about this question here, as I want an answer that has that you thought about, and if you had to go back through all things that you experienced, and you did go through a lot, what would you say of all the things you went through that you would in fact change if you had a chance to go back through your life story and to arrive at from that point up to today? What would you say in between then and now would you change and do differently than what you did in the past? Is there anything you could that come to mind that you would do differently that you wish you had done that at the time but you didn't do it, but now think about doing a little bit different today?
Yeah, well, we all make mistakes, and it's a human condition. And uh, I've achieved a lot of things. Like for example, my picture is at Saginaw Valley University on the wall as the most distinguished alumnus of the school that year that I
At
was there.
Saginaw Valley?
Yes,
Okay.
And it's also in Flint Central, the most distinguished alumnus, along with some judges and other folks there. And I think that I'm the only Black person that has that distinction at Flint Central. I went to school with where Billy Durant went to school. And, and although,
At the same time?
no,
Oh.
Billy Durant was born in 1875.
Oh, okay, not at the same time. I was going to say, are you 200 years older?
Yeah.
How old are you again?
Well, but I always think of Billy Durant as being my peer,
Okay.
because we went to the same school.
Yeah. When I first came to, I came here in 1966.
Mhm.
Every time I'd ask those kids my homework, because I used to call the roll to get my homework fast. You're not skating on me. They made me go through the fire to get my diploma. I'll make you go through the fire. You're not coming out of here without being able to read and write. So I would ask my homework. I call a roll up. Every time I call a roll up, this one guy would make some excuse why he didn't have his homework. He would tell me, I never forget this little joker. He'd tell me, Mr. Moss, I can go across the street today and make more money than you're making. Because at that time, teachers were making this little chump change. He wanted to remind me I was just a little fly on the wall. But they were making big money at that time. And I know that I couldn't understand why they would call themselves shop rats. I heard that a lot.
Yes.
And this was surprising me because I came out of the South. There was a work ethic that was different down there than it was up here. We knew that we didn't have that on our side. I mean, Bull Connor, was he on our side? What about George Wallace? Those names ring a bell to you?
Yeah.
And Governor Forbes, Orville Forbes of Georgia, and Ross Barnett of Mississippi. I remember them very well.
One of them was from Arkansas.
I think Orville was from Arkansas, wasn't he? Yeah, he was. Orville, he was from
I remember the
Forbes.
history.
Yeah, and we knew that we didn't have any allies, and so we didn't have all this excuse making. When I came here and I heard all these excuses, the goat ate my homework. I couldn't relate to these stories they were telling me about what I not able to perform. I had a standard I wanted to perform at, and that was required of me, and I wanted to require it of my students. It's amazing though that I meet a lot of them today where.
Thank you.
Thank you for the fact that you were more rigorous in terms of what you require. Because I wasn't changing my standards. I don't care what they said. Just complain and do all kinds of little things kids do. But I never got discouraged because I knew how I was trained and how I got the way I was, and I was not going to slack off and cheat them out of what they had to accomplish for themselves. I could help them, but a lot of it they had to do themselves. You had to bring your homework in here and put that on my desk. I'm not trying to let the go to eat your homework. But just little things like that. And I tell you what I would change. If I ask you what you would change if you.
And I was going to do it.
Yeah, you're going to do a 360 on me.
Yeah.
I tell you what I would change. What I didn't understand, I have a lot of guilt about this now. I didn't understand my mom. I don't think we understand our parents as well as we should when we are young, and they get a lot of abuse because of our lack of understanding. But I never understood until I got married. So I got married and I went to a family that had I went into a ready-made family. My wife had 3 children. And it wasn't until I sit at that table with my children, my adopted children, and my wife had cooked some chicken and some other stuff for dinner. And they were grabbing all the big pieces of chicken out of the basket and it came out to me and there's little wing in here and I worked all the week and all that food I put on the table, here I am getting a wing. And then I said at the table, I'm recognizing what my mom had sacrificed. Because I remember I was always asking my mom when we would go to the store, our dinner would be like pork and beans, maybe some hamburger. And we make the patties out. We had five, there were 5 of us, 5 children. And if our mom didn't want any, we could make bigger patties for us. I didn't know my mom was sacrificing. It was only when I sat there with my own family at that first dinner table that it struck me, because I was hungry and I didn't want a wing. I wanted the big piece of chicken and so on and so forth. And that's when I recognized how my mom was sacrificing. I would always call in, Mom, do you want any? And she'd always would say no. I thought when you became an adult, you didn't get hungry. I didn't know, and I wish I had known at that time, that my mom was sacrificing because her kids, I get very emotional, would get a bigger patty if she didn't eat. I didn't know she was sacrificing. I feel I would change that. I would change that.
Yeah, while you're catching a breath here,
Yeah, thank you.
um,
I need to.
you know, George, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because that's the very same thing I was going to say in my situation. The thing I would change and spend more time with my mom and dad,
Mhm.
teaching them the skills,
Teach them the skills.
yeah, that I learned, which my mom went everywhere with us. She went to the inaugurations of the president. She
Okay.
met the presidents. She, but my dad didn't because he didn't live quite as long. And I wished I had spent time with them on the other side, like I spent with my children. And yet, we took my mom. She was a survivor. Everywhere we went, we traveled all over the country. The only place that we had not gone, and these sometimes the cars were provided by General Motors Corporation, limousines,
Mhm.
that I could take my family to the inauguration or to the presidential uh, convention,
Mhm.
and where they got to meet many of the people of significance at that time, like the Rockefellers. My mother met, and she even had things that they signed for her. My mother went with me when we went to $1,000 plate dinner at in Washington when President Nixon left the office and Ford assumed the presidency. We went to presidents of the inauguration of Gerald Ford.
Mhm.
And that's the time I met Ella Fitzgerald, Harry James, I met Peggy Flemings, I met Chuck Connor, I met Jimmy Dorsey,
Chuck Connor,
the
the
rifleman.
rifleman.
Yes.
Mhm.
And but we had and maybe we took her to Jamaica, my mother, but yet, when I think about it, Uh, she was as important on the one side, and so was my dad. And I wish they could have lived the life that from the pinnacle that I saw life.
Mhm.
And you don't have to love it, but parents have a lot to do with who we are.
No question
And
about it.
my mother inspired us.
Mhm.
She inspired me to do the things I did. There was a time at high school, my mother came over, and I was in a declamation contest, and I was to speak before this audience of white people
Mhm.
at Glen Central. And and this girl, Carol Gosha, and her family owned a furniture company in Owasso. So they were very prominent. And so the night of the contest, all of the kids, the Negro kids, they came to see me get a shellacking. Oh
They
boy.
didn't think you were gonna be able to do
Yeah,
it
they thought that I was going to be second best. But guess what? I was really good. I remember delivering that. Um, let me see. I remember talking about that and how well I did. But the judges said, "Well, Henry, you gestured too much. You were good." There was no doubt. They said they gave me my due. They said I was good, and I was inducted into the hall and the kids who are most likely to succeed.
Mhm.
Yeah, as a result of that. Then I went these how good I was. I became president of my class.
Hey, what grade level we talking about?
Well, this was when I had the declamation contest was 10th grade,
What grade?
10th.
10. Okay.
And then I became the president of my class.
Mhm.
And and after that, the next year, I became the vice president, and then the secretary. It was my senior year. So I gained a lot from that, and and people gave me my due, and I went, of course, to Wolverine Boys State, and my mother, and I ran for governor. Now here's this: there are 1,100 kids here at Wolverine Boys State, and we stayed in the Quonset huts at Michigan State University, and and we marched down Michigan Avenue from Michigan State down Michigan Avenue to the Capitol building where we assumed our various positions. And I was walking along the street, gesturing like this, waving like that occasionally. And my mother had a tall hat on me, like Abraham Lincoln would wear, and also the tails. Boy, I was decked out. And then I had this slogan that was like, I've seen them better. I've seen them good. I've seen them better. The best of all is Henry Hatter. I had such fun. And then I went to Camp Copenhagen. They kept me busy. I had a great experience.
There.
I was a good student as well
Mhm,
when I was in high school.
mhm.
And and because my mother spent so much time with me and the other kids. Now she had 11 kids now, but I and my dad, we would go out on the weekends and haul junk, clean out basements and stuff like that. And I had so many books. I had James Oliver Curwood, all of his documents. Oliver Curwood was from Ovasso, and he wrote mostly about life in Michigan at that time. Then I had um, the books of Moby Dick and all of those,
Mhm.
and Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. And the kids, they may have had a problem with it, but I really loved those books.
Yeah, we read more.
I love those books.
We were more of a reading
Yeah.
group in that time period.
Yeah.
They didn't have a lot of. How many TV sets did you have in your neighborhood? We had one TV set in the whole neighborhood. Everybody would meet there for.
Yeah.
We had to see the
Yeah.
Lone Ranger on Thursday night
Yeah.
at 6 o'clock. We got the whole neighborhood right there in that room. You're not sitting in that TV
Yeah.
set because you sit the whole neighborhood will
Yeah.
know that's missing. But no, we read a lot more. I learned all the classics through the comic books. The classic,
Yes.
remember the classic comic books?
Yes.
So all the Three Musketeers by the Dumas, the Dumas group, that family of writers, Alexander Dumas.
Yes.
And so reading the Three Musketeers and the Count of Monte Cristo and books like that, reading in comic book form, when I went to my 12th grade class where I had my most outstanding teacher, Mrs. Reed, who I will never forget. I write Mrs. Reed's name now, and it is her name that I write because she was that teacher that held you accountable. And one day she accused me and a guy named Adolph Davidson of having cheated writing the papers. I had read newspaper for him, but the silly idiot didn't go and read it before he passed it. He passed it as I written it, didn't read it. She called up to the desk. I will never forget it. She calls up to the desk and she said, Moss, you and Adolph Davidson, I don't think you wrote your papers. So she asked Adolph, she said, Adolph, what's in your paper? He couldn't say one word. He hadn't read it, he hadn't even read it. Just passing it sight unseen. Then she turned to me and said, okay, Moss, what is in your paper? She told Adolph Davidson first, go sit down. You didn't write it. Go sit down. Then she turned to me, she said, Moss, what is in your paper? I had written on the tenant farmers was a topic I wrote on. I got the title out of the book, but I wrote it myself. I told her it was in the paper. She listened for about a minute or so and kept nodding her head like this right here. And she said, yeah, you wrote it. Go sit down. You know what I did? Rather than, I used to tell my students this story too. I used to tell them, I could have taken that as she accused me of cheating when I didn't on my paper. I cheated on this paper, but not on mine. But I said, rather than taking some umbrage to it, I went back to my seat. No one had written Adolph Davidson paper. She thought that had been come out of a book, and my paper, she thought that came out of a book. I went back to my seats about 15 minutes before that bell sounded, and I'm sitting back there nodding my head. And I'm saying to myself, I'm pretty good.
Yeah. You know, that's interesting because when I got to middle school, junior high school,
Hmm.
I was so good at reading and writing
Hmm.
that they inducted me into, first of all, I had algebra and I had language arts that were commensurate with what white kids had at those entry levels. And in the eighth grade, I had Latin. Stop and think about it. I had Latin.
Had Latin in
Yeah. And then I had algebra.
challenging classes.
Yeah. They were very high focus classes.
Hmm.
And when I got to high school, I was so good that could write. I could ghostwrite for other kids. And did the same thing in colleges. The kids always sought me out to do a short theme for them, so that they could do a really good job. And I was really good at that. And and I was good with that when I became secretary of the Republican Party. I used to keep the records. I've got the records right now. Some of them I kept um, of all of the meetings of the proceedings, and in the loft in the barn. That's how good I was. But I'm not saying that I was good because just to make myself look good, but it's what I learned through the efforts I had. All of these things coming together. A good family, a good aspiration. I had people in a party who taught me a lot.
Hmm.
And then when I went to General Motors, I even spoke for General Motors. I was a professional witness for legal affairs. I was there. They asked me to present General Motors' position for NAFTA at the Chamber of Commerce here.
Hmm.
Larry Ford was there at the same time. There was, and so I did that. That's how good I was.
Hmm.
You know, I would have never had that unless somebody had taught me
Hmm.
to believe in myself.
What teacher stands out, would you say, in your 12 years of public education? Which teacher stands out in your mind?
Well, it would be the teacher in drama. Um, she was. I was in drama, and she um, would jump out of a closet with a with a dagger in hand and a thrusting position. Scared the hell out of the kids.
She be in the closet.
Well, but she was really good with Shakespeare.
Oh,
You know,
I see.
I had all of these Shakespearean plays
Okay.
like King Lear and King Oedipus and Richard III and um, The Merchant of Venice.
Yeah,
And
they don't even teach that anymore. Yeah,
no, no.
what do you, Henry? You were on school. Well, let me ask you a question about this. What do you think about? I was surprised when I heard this that persons are coming out of high school and have not been taught cursive writing. Cursive.
Yeah. That's
Where did that start? I was surprised to hear that.
well, that was a mood by people in that generation that decided cursive writing wasn't necessary. Now we have computers, and computers do all of our do all of our typing for us. This is a technical age, and technology has taken over, which was really stupid. That was really bad.
Well, did
But
that
they're
happen when
going,
you were on the school board? Were you on the school board when some of that was beginning to take place? Where they stopped writing cursive and everybody's now printing and
yeah,
not
yeah,
connecting it
and
to
they
letters?
still can't print. Kids today, I'm sorry, they were good at computer technology and searching for stuff and playing games, but their intuitive thinking is not there anymore. Their abilities to put together projects and to take a task and complete that task and to develop um, a thought that's coherent enough to transfer to other people working on the same project. You know, they just don't have it. Um,
How much of your education was rote? You know, where you had to memorize. Did you do a lot of memorization type things? Like in elementary school, you had to learn it.
oh, and math and mathematics, of course. If you don't
Timetables.
remember, not only timetable, but concepts,
Concept. Yeah.
corollaries,
Hmm.
axioms, and theories.
Hmm.
If you don't do that, you will never get through, man. You will never understand it. You know, calculus, you might as well forget it because calculus is. Um,
We read so much, you know.
yeah.
When I went to high school, and we had grades 1 through 8 was our elementary school. Then we had 9 through 12. The ninth graders would meet at what they called the high school
Mhm.
annex. So you were on a different part
Yeah.
of the campus. But 10, 11, 12 was like the high school. You
Mhm.
went to an intermediate kind of high school in ninth grade, and it surprised me to look back at it now, and then going through what I went through when I started teaching. It was just really I was dumbfounded by a lot of things I ran into, because in 4 years of being out of high school and being in college, I had seen so much had changed from the 4 years that I was in college from what they were now doing in school. And I was just surprised when children would stand up and tell me that they didn't have the homework because they were not here yet. I wasn't here yesterday, and it said it so boldly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we were absent, you know, we used to
Yeah.
call around.
Yeah.
Your responsibility was to call and find out what the assignment was. And we went to class the next day. You had assignment like everybody else did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they thought they were so bold in telling you, "Well, I wasn't here yesterday. I'm
Yeah.
getting ready to get my paddle out. We can paddle at that time. You have your homework. I'm getting ready to start paddling."
Well, you know, it's similar to that right now, but only the kids run the classroom. The teachers have, the kids can tell you that they don't have to do anything. You can't make them.
You know what? I could not work in this environment today.
Yeah.
I probably end up killing somebody. You
Well,
can't sit down and let the other children learn. If you don't learn anything, that's a decision you got to make for yourself. You cannot make that for 29 other students in that classroom, and I wouldn't let them do that.
but we are fortunate that that 15 or 20% of the kids in the world, they have innate abilities that you can't stamp out of them. You can give them an assignment and leave the classroom, or have them take it home and have them complete the assignment. They will complete that assignment. They will find out a way how to complete it. But the majority of kids will do nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I tell you what I'm impressed with as far as education is concerned. I'm really impressed with the Japanese school system. You know, when those teachers are absent
Yeah.
for whatever reason, they don't even call another sub. Those children will go in those classrooms without the
Yeah.
instructor,
Yeah.
open their books up and do what they're supposed to
Yeah.
do. And they don't even have a janitor in those schools. Those children will pick up after themselves, clean the school up, and they don't even have a janitor. And so this it's just a marvel to see that, particularly in this time period when our education has changed so much. I don't know, I don't know how we get back to some of the things you and I went through, which
We
benefited
can't get
us.
back.
You don't think we can ever do
No,
it?
we can't get back. We're too close to this slippery slope. We're moving into an oligarchy now, and people will divide themselves into the rich, and hopefully the middle class, and there'll be the poor. Only the poor people will be, and at a time when populations are rising and resources are declining, which is a catastrophe in the making.
Hmm.
And somehow they got to figure out, and we got to remember AI is there,
Hmm.
and AI is producing robots, other types of devices that are labor saving and don't need the help of human beings. Now, so you can just imagine the disaster that's coming toward us. What do we do with people if they are not employable? And how do you feed them as we pollute more of the air and the land and water and resources such as gasolines and fossil fuels are disappearing and are getting harder to reach.
Hmm.
And it takes as much money to extract it out of the ground as you make in funds. There's a point of nominal returns.
Yeah.
And you were talking about this knowledge, the idea of knowledge. Francis Bacon of the 16th and 17th century, he said that knowledge is power.
Hmm.
And you said, oh, talking about the memorizing stuff.
Hmm.
Think about how in the Dark Ages, how people remembered what the Romans and the Greeks had done. Um, they had they had saved these books in libraries and stuff like that, and they could constantly go back to them and review them. But they had to have good memories, and it was I don't know. It, today, knowledge is power. Because if you don't have any knowledge, you have no use for uh, the business client or for anything else for institutions. You've got to have knowledge, and we don't use our memories as much as in America, we have the
Yeah, that's
computers and stuff.
unfortunate. I think that the memorization in elementary school in particular was what was a grounding point for me. I remember having to memorize the Gettysburg Address,
Yeah,
and that was required. You were not getting out
yeah,
of the eighth grade class at Patterson Elementary School. You're not getting out of that school without having memorized that. Every student had to learn it, and then grade by grade. I remember one time I didn't realize that I had a good memory, and I was gonna. You had to learn your timetables. Those six timetables I could not get down, but I copied it down just to kind of get my memory going to be able to memorize it. So when teacher called me to stand by you stood by your desk and you stand up and you would recite. I put the paper down on the floor, so I was gonna cheat. Six times one is six. Six times two is 12. So the kids didn't like me, but they wanted to always get me in trouble. Mrs. Sampson, Moss is looking at his paper. So I said, no, I didn't. I can come to the front and say it. I'm saying to myself, you stupid, what are you talking about? You don't know your timetables. But writing them out, I ain't memorized without knowing it. I get to the front, I got to the last one, 6 times 12, 72. And I walked back to my seat. I was shocked. I had never remembered that. I didn't have the confidence in my memory when I kept learning these little things kept guide. I feel like somebody was guiding me so that I would not end up where I was. I was in a lot of poverty when I was coming up, and I was living with rats in the house where I was. I have been bitten by rats. They get in bed with you when you're sleeping. If you did what we did, we used to eat. Our house was cold, so we get our cornbread and we go into bed and eat under the
yeah.
cover. Those rats will come up there and when you're sleeping
Nibble off.
and nibble off, find that bread. And if you move, you might get bit. I've been bitten by rats. But what kept me moving
Were they
forward
big
was
rats or just
these were
mice?
gophers. I thought these were rabbits. These were not
They
these
were big.
rabbits. Rabbit. When I say rats, I'm talking like rabbits.
Yeah.
They would look at they would be in that loft and look down at you, and then they're staring you down. It was rough, Henry. But what drove me and kept driving me and drives me now. Man's problems is childhood, and I'm driven right now by the poverty I lived in. I've squeezed nickels. I think every nickel that I spend has migraine by the time I spend it because you learn how to be frugal, that. But I've seen the poverty. I understand the poverty. What I don't understand is excuse making because what the poverty did to me was teach me that I didn't like it, and because I didn't like it, I didn't want to duplicate it in my adulthood. It was in my childhood, but I was working myself out of it. And a lot of kids would criticize me, Henry, when I was going to school. I was wearing the same pants because
Yeah.
you screw up your pants
Sure.
in the wash tub. And one time the Clorox fell into the wash tub and they bleached the pants. So I'm wearing those pants in the classroom. Those same spots were always the same every day. But what they didn't see, here's what they didn't see. Marsh, you wearing the same pants every day. But what they didn't see, I was working my program. And I got to a point, once I got my first degree, I had 3 degrees. When I got my first degree, I wanted to ask all those kids who were laughing at me, how you like me now? Because what they didn't see what I was doing, I was working my program because I was determined that childhood was going to be my past. So my childhood would not be my adulthood. And I used it as a stepping stone. That's why I can't understand people giving up. because you're bigger. I can tell this from my own experience. You're bigger than the problem you will ever face. No problem is bigger than you. And every problem that I face, I didn't know how small the problem was until I got on the other side of it. When I got on the other side of it, I realized that wasn't so bad. And then it prepared me for something maybe bigger, and that obstacle could be overcome because I had already had the successes in overcoming obstacles in the past. But that's how you have to learn it. You don't know how big you are and how big you are. You compare that to what you've overcome in order to get where you to your goals.
Well, George, and that you're talking about education. Now, the president has said that he's going to scrap DEI and affirmative action and all sources of contact with anything that reminds people of race, gender,
Mhm.
etc. Where do Black people have to go to find parity? Do they just have to start working harder, or do they have to resolve themselves to knuckle up and be competitive with people who are white or Asians? Because those are the challenge, whites and Asians, and also the other Arabs and Jews and etc. We're the lowest performing segment of public education in the nation. We're Mexicans, everybody else beat us out. So where do we have to go to find parity? What should we be telling our kids to do?
Well, I tell you when I heard when I was in school, I heard in every class I was in, um, at that time period, they were telling us you had to be twice as good. I heard that all the time,
Yeah,
every class,
yeah.
because you didn't have any allies. They're not giving you anything. You got to go out there and earn your way and make your path.
Can you tell this to the kids? Can you look at the kids and tell them that this is what they need to be doing?
Yeah, I'm not
Not being so
Henry.
resistant.
I get criticized. I write on Facebook every day. I get criticized. There's one person, my Facebook post just to criticize me, but she believes in DEI,
Uh,
and I'm
well, I
a
don't.
I don't either. And I'm a very strong.
I don't believe in
I'm a
affirmative
very
action either.
I'm a very firm critic of DEI,
So am I.
and they can't get to that. One person told me that you are blah blah blah, and he doesn't have anybody in his administration that looks like you. And I'm trying to I'm throwing
He has
back,
my daughter.
yeah, but they're trying to say that in his cabinet,
Oh yeah.
he didn't appoint. I mean, not
Yeah, he
not
has
Dr.
one.
Carson.
He has one.
Yeah, that one guy that's what's that person?
He's over Hugh.
Over here, that's right,
Yeah.
over Hood. Over his
Yeah,
Hood, isn't it?
Hood. Yeah.
Hood. Yeah, it doesn't. But you know what? The point I made in return to that comment of the DEI is that when I'm getting ready to go to Africa in May, I'm going
Mhm.
back again. This is my either my last time going to Africa or next to the last time. I've got one more year on my passport. I might use it next year in 26. But I was not going to go this year, but I decided, well, let me go and say goodbye in case I don't go next year. But I hope and I said to that person who asked me about DEI, what I look for when I get on that, what I want on that in that pilot in that cockpit is a pilot that knows how to fly that plane. That plane. I'm not looking at the color of the pilot, nor is that in fact consequential. And that's another thing that another ditch we have fallen into. This idea that merit doesn't count, that somehow you have to have somebody to give you something that you've not earned. I don't get. I think everything you have, Henry,
Do
you
you know how weak I would be if I depended on government and on other people giving me something? I would never. It's like a dog. If you feed it, it won't hunt, right?
yeah, my dogs can't hunt because they go in there for that breakfast in the morning. Are you cooking that chicken? I cook chicken for them. Yeah, they wouldn't know how to fend for themselves
Yeah.
because they've always been dependent upon my hand to deliver the food. Dogs don't bite the hand to feed them. They understand where the meal is coming from. But yeah, you're right. You learn that dependency, and we couldn't. That's a lesson we didn't learn. We couldn't afford to learn because who's going to be there if we didn't make it happen for ourselves? Who's going to give the advantage? You gave yourself the advantage, and everything you have. I know that be true of your life that you work for it and you
Yeah.
had to accomplish it on your own terms. You had to go out there and get it. Well, Henry, we have had a marvelous conversation. I need to ask you one last thing
Okay.
before we get out of here. Because John's telling us, whenever John's doing this right here, trying to saw his, either telling us to get out of here or John's trying to saw his head off. I don't think he's trying to saw his head off. But what kind of job would you, what kind of grade would you give Donald Trump right now if you were going to grade him on his performance for the first going 100 days?
I would give him a B minus. And the reason I would do that is because there are certain things that I wish the president would do. Just like you asked me the question, what would I do if I had to go back and do something over? I wished he would, instead of sending people back to their homelands, transporting them back to their homeland, they would call it repatriation instead of
Deporting them out of the country?
deporting. Yeah, yeah. It would kind of tidy up things so that his critics won't jump on him all the time. Because I know he's doing a good job with getting rid of people that don't belong here. I was born here. This is my country.
Mhm.
And there are boundaries around a nation. I can't go anywhere in the world I want to go because other nations won't accept me there.
Mhm.
But people can walk in, they can hear and pick up the jobs because oftentimes they're better educated than we are. They're better prepared. They have a greater work ethic, stuff like that.
Mhm.
We can't compete against them.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, Henry, I tell you, it's been an honor for me to sit here with you for the last hour or so, and I want to thank you for coming into studio on not on your time, but on well on your time too, but on the time in which I'm doing this program, and I'm glad you're here, and
Oh,
I'm
thank
glad
you.
that you were here for the last hour. So,
Thank you.
okay, until next week, folks, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.